5 so far. In fact, we had two very senior leaders from Intuit as well, in the earlier sessions. And to top it all, we're going to have, I would say, the man behind Intuit, right? So Sanket, who is the MD of Intuit India and has been a product man himself in his entire career, having built, so many popular brands in India and outside. Welcome to this chat, Sanket, and we have a lot of folks on this session with us. And what's very interesting is, we had about 400 folks registered. We had to filter them out, ensure that we give preference to existing entrepreneurs, people who with some relevance to this context. We filter it out again with a lot of focus on people from tier 2, tier 3 cities, the non-metros. You would have a lot of people on this from there. So that's from a context setting, and it would be great if you could start the session with a quick introduction into your focus at Intuit, for Intuit.
Absolutely, Gautam. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this, and hello to everybody online. I can't see you guys, but it's awesome to have you here. So I joined Intuit about 18 months ago, and I came from a company called Oracle with a major enterprise focus internationally, and I was very active in the startup ecosystem there as well. In fact, I started Oracle's startup ecosystem globally out of Bangalore, and we extended it. So upon joining Intuit, there were a few things that were super important for me, and these are relevant towards what I'm going to talk about. One thing was Intuit's mission. Intuit's mission is powering prosperity around the world. And it's a company that lives by its values. So when the CEO goes up and has to give a conference to financial analysts, the CEO starts with the mission and the values. No other company does that. In fact, you go to several other companies in MNCs and non-MNCs here, you ask them what the mission is, they have no clue. So really important for me. And then the other thing that really got to me was I read this book called Inside Intuit. It was about Scott Cook's journey on how he conceptualized the original Quicken and came up to the level where it became really accepted in the industry, and the whole process there. And that's a great learning, because effectively what are we? And it was a bit of a cliche, but we're like a 35-year-old startup. And the reason we call ourselves a 35-year-old startup is because we have reinvented ourselves every so many years based on what's been happening in the industry and what's been happening with our customers. Our entire focus for the company is customer orientation. That's what drives us. We use the latest of technologies, you name it, blockchain, AI, ML, XYZ, we use all of them, but all towards serving the customer, right? So that's fundamental to what we do. So I'll expand on that in a little bit as well. In India, India is one of the largest development centers for Intuit worldwide. We like to say that we're a microcosm of Intuit Global. So there's a presence of every team here. And what's excellent also is that we have presence of our accounting software here. It's called QuickBooks Online. So we have the presence of that in the market, which is doing really well. And the folks in the organization are extremely proud that we are a significant part of product development for Intuit. Greater than a third of it happens right here. And we contribute towards the growth of Intuit globally. All of these things are extremely relevant in the context of what we're going to talk about.
Of course. As we speak, there are a good number of questions anyways. So, just for you guys, I would be pausing at logical intervals. I won't be able to take questions, every 5 minutes for Sanket. We do have a planned flow, but we would be pausing at logical intervals to take your questions. So good that you mentioned this, Sanket. Right? In fact, the first thing that comes to my mind as well is the is the innovation culture that Intuit is probably not just being able to build, but also being able to stand out for. So at this juncture, let me dive a bit deeper into the Indian ecosystem, right? So given that everyone here are entrepreneurs in India, building for India as well as the global market, how do you see the the Indian ecosystem, the role that startups and SMBs play, let's say in the next 3 to 5 years? Because I'm setting this context so that we can dive a bit deeper into how do we build for the global market from India?
Sure. First of all, I think India is on an amazing trajectory as a country and an economy. So at present, we are at a certain level, but the goal is to grow to a $5 trillion economy. From a digital economy perspective, we're hovering around, $200 billion or so. And again, that's supposed to grow to a trillion. Up to 500 billion of that is supposed to be existing companies growing and doing amazing things in the market. Half a trillion or 500 billion of that is expected to be through new companies. New companies are the folks we have online here. So it's an amazing opportunity and an amazing time to be in India. Now, the opportunity is there. What do we do about it, right? So there's a concept I have spoken about, I've written about earlier, called the 3Ts. I'll just like to mention those to you. These 3Ts are basically enablers of the amazing international market penetration that the startups can do out of India. So the first one is talent, right? What happens today is getting somebody to work for your startup is not that difficult anymore. Around 20, 25 years ago, it was impossible, right? In fact, the first preference was, can I get a government job which is nice paying, I can retire on that. Slowly after that, things started opening up and people were like, well, okay, let's take a look at some of the larger companies, MNCs. Today, we're at a stage where people are very adventurous. They're more than willing to take a risk, right? Failure is no longer considered bad, it's considered learning. And I think that has changed a lot. The other part is, in case you don't know something, you can easily learn it. Say, take the example of Facebook and Google, who are not mandating a college degree anymore. Why? Because anything you want to know, you can learn. I personally think having a college degree is a good idea, but just as an example. So, as a startup, you hire smart people, they don't know something, a week later they will. So that barrier to entry is gone. So talent and talent availability and education is immense, right? The other part is technology. So say even as near to us as 5-6 years ago, if you thought of opening up a company doing e-commerce, it was a daunting task. You would have to figure out where to set up your data center, etc. And getting access to all the latest technologies. Today, what enables us to be able to leverage the same technologies as giants is a 3-letter acronym that's very popular in India. Do you know what that is, Gautam?
I don't think I would be in a position to guess that. Sanket.
So a lot of people say AWS, and I'm like, AWS is one part of that, but it's actually EMI.
You know what? You had people guessing AWS here.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh. Guys, I can't see the screen there, so sorry about that. But yeah, that's definitely a good guess. But EMI, which is basically the ability to get the latest technologies online in things like AWS, but there are other players as well, Azure, etc., and work like the big boys, right? That's absolutely amazing. The other thing that's remarkable is the great availability of open source software that you can leverage. Almost any area you want to work in, it's available. So you can take that, integrate, and then go to market with it. So technology is no longer a barrier. And finally, it's your target market. So which goes towards the international aspect of what you were saying. So we could have a startup sitting in Jaipur, for example, wanting to target, say, a city in France. Say, they want to target Lyon. With technology and the available data today, they don't just have the ability to target Lyon, they have the ability to target a particular neighborhood, in fact, a particular block in Lyon, right? And do that really well. So the market research, etc., everything is available, including the ability to do marketing there. So these 3Ts have leveled the playing ground. So where you're at doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the ideas and the entrepreneurial, culture that you've got.
I'm just going to move to the next one, right? So
Sure.
It was very important that we mentioned the 3Ts. What I'm going to touch here is a lot of us on this call as well, and a lot of us listening into this are definitely building for the global market, like you did say. A lot of us are based out of tier 2 cities as well. What we've been able to crack so far is, it's been definitely a good amount of journey getting those first few customers, and a lot of times the first few customers are based out of India. Where we find it difficult is actually scaling up to that global market. One is the entire market access. The second is the go-to-market strategy itself, which is probably very fundamental to anything that we're trying to do there. Is there any suggestion that you would have for the product companies that are trying to build for the global market from India?
Yeah. So, what I'm going to tell you is something that might sound boring, but it's very important that we keep that in mind. So unlike the Steve Jobs or the Elon Musks of the world who say that they know what the customer wants and they'll build it, majority of the companies don't. So it's very important to have a customer orientation in mind. Start with the customer. Figure out what are the pain points you would like to solve for the customer. What is it that you can do within your capacity to be able to address those pain points, and whether it's going to give you a competitive advantage. This truth holds no matter if you're trying to address a market in India or you're trying to address a market internationally. Right? And with that is how we approach the development of the product. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people, especially people coming from an engineering background, they're like, hey, this is a cool technology, let me build something using that. And let me tell you, what is it that I need to build, because this is based on my experience. They forget the customer altogether. And then when the actual product hits the market, there's no demand for it, for whatever reason. So you have to always start with the customer. And not just that, you have to keep on reinventing yourself. When there's a particular solution you've come up with, keep on reinventing. Now, sitting in India, I think one of the first things you need to do is see if you have a market in India or not, because it's always nice to have proximity. Right? And you have a local market, you try to talk to the people, get a better understanding. When it comes time to go global, like I said, there's technologies available for you to be able to figure out where in the world you'd like to actually target. Right? As far as digital marketing is concerned, I think all people today in the industry know very well how to use it. But what is often important is getting a true understanding of the actual customer in that market.
Very true.
So I'll give an example from Intuit side. We have these products called QuickBooks Desktop, right? Completely done out of India. The entire market is
The global
US.
market or the US market.
Right. How do we do this? Right? It's very, very difficult. So we have our folks in the US who help us out there. For example, the support organization is able to give us quite a lot of feedback. We have people who work for the company there who actually go and do what we call follow me homes, which is basically participant observations. They go there and figure out how the customer is using the product, or what's the new pain points we'd like to address, and convey them here. We have video recordings of them. We do a lot of video calls, etc. So the fundamental there is, and a learning to the startups is, no matter where you go, you need to have some kind of a local partnership. And I'm not talking about a business partnership in the form of a distributor or whatever, but a partnership that's going to help you in your product direction determination.
Understanding the market.
Exactly. So we should not fool ourselves that we can understand, even in Bangalore, right, sitting here on Outer Ring Road, we should not pretend we understand what's happening in Banashankari.
Absolutely.
Right? You need to have somebody there who's going to tell you, man, this is what's going on. Likewise, I think we have to be humble, try to figure out what to do, and plus, head out there, see what's going on.
In fact, there's a popular saying, since you mentioned Bangalore, you don't understand Silk Board till you reach there. Right? So
Exactly.
I'm sure this is something that people who've been to Bangalore would relate to. But that's a very important point that you mentioned, Sanket. In terms of when you keep scaling up to new markets, ensure that you have a good understanding of that market before you try scaling up, right? Because otherwise there's a good amount of effort that goes in terms of scaling it up to these new geographies.
So I'll give you another dimension there. One is, of course, what the product is, what the technologies are involved, what are the feature sets. The other thing that's more of an art than a science is pricing, right? What do you charge for something? I know Salesforce.com had a major issue when they penetrated the Indian market. Then they had to come back and have a special strategy for India. And after that, they, Salesforce proliferated. So the point is, all of these things have to take into account. Fundamental to this is that when you are running a company, you have to think along these lines. It's not just engineering, not just business. Think from a wholesome point of view, and then your strategy will be robust.
Absolutely. So I have a very leading question from here. Right? So we did speak about the 3 T's and how talent is extremely important, and then we moved to the initial strategies of building from India to global markets, and you gave examples of how the QuickBooks Online is being or QuickBooks Desktop is being delivered. So I have a very important question that I did hear and see from a lot of people here. Uh, when we are looking at building new products, right? So it could be our first product, it could be subsequent products. Uh, what is your strategy? It could be from your past experience, or the strategy that you feel or you believe for Intuit. How quick do you put together the product and roll it out to the market? Or in simpler words, can I talk about what is your strategy behind MVP, and how fast do you push that to market?
Okay. So there are two aspects to MVP. One is the product definition, right? What is it that you'd like to create? What is the basic thing that will be accepted as a product and used, right? So lots of research happens there. We talked about being customer orientated. But another dimension that happens with especially tech startups is the not invented here syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to create a particular product. They're like, okay, let me do everything that's part of it. As a result, they might create something spectacular. But man, the opportunity cost and actually the cost of implementation is immense. Absolutely immense. I'll give you an example from the context of Intuit itself.
Sure.
So our QuickBooks Online product has a set of APIs we call the IDG layer. So these APIs expose various parts of the product that you can program on top of. So say you wanted to create a nice fintech product for a particular segment. And there are various segments there, and you can pick your favorite one, say fruit vendors, right? You want to do that, you wanted to expose just 2 or 3 functionalities. Maybe one is a sale, one is an expense, the other one is some kind of reports, right? So you could choose to do the whole thing yourself, right? So where you figure out how to design a mobile product, a nice interface, you figure out what are the basic functionalities needed, and underneath that, create your own accounting system, a subset of an accounting system. And as you go along, you realize there's a lot more to the accounting system than meets the eye, right? And plus, as your product gains more traction, there's more and more need to do a lot more things. What ends up happening is you get to a mode where all you're trying to do is try to create that foundational part of your product when you're missing the key ingredient, which is your interface to the actual fruit vendors, right? So this is an example of you losing track of your core competency, your actual focus on what you're trying to do with the customer, and trying to do the legwork which you shouldn't need to do. So the point here is there's lots of building blocks available in the industry today. Leverage them, put them together. So I think some of the best companies today are companies that have integrated and figured out where they wanted to add the value, right? And the other point is, if you're trying to do everything yourself, your time to market has increased dramatically. It'll take you a couple of years to create a good mobile app that has a fintech, foundation. Whereas if you base it on our APIs, you can do that within a month or 2. So think about the opportunity cost you're saving.
That's a very interesting point, Sanket. So I'm just going to take a pause here from the flow, and going to dive a bit deeper into one of the points that you just mentioned, right? So you did briefly touch upon this entire field of APIs, platforms, and integrations. If you don't mind, I'm going to dive a bit deeper here, because from the registration forms, I could realize that a lot of startups are building products. Some of them in the building for the payroll, tracking. Some of them in the in the other aspects of supply chain. I'm sure, like you said, what they are finding it difficult is this entire decision between do I build the entire ecosystem before taking it to my client, or do I build what I'm really strong at and integrate it with what is already existing, right? So at this point, if you could probably give us some examples as well in terms of the marketplace that you have, which probably allows startups that are probably addressing the other business processes. Right? It could be on the supply chain space, it could be on the payroll, attendance, the various aspects around business processes. If you could probably tell us what exactly was the thought behind opening up QuickBooks APIs, number one, and number two, if I'm a startup sitting out of India, how can I leverage this kind of a marketplace to build on top. And I think in a way that would also answer your point on whatever is that problem that you're solving. Focus and go deep on that. You have enough products already available, and just integrate into the ecosystem.
Correct. Long question. I don't remember all the aspects of that, but jokes aside, Gautam, look, the fundamental fact is that without focus, you won't get anywhere, right? So the whole point behind us opening up the APIs is to enable companies to get to the market much quicker. And so that's one part, right? So ultimately, so let's take a step back, almost a philosophical step back, and try to see what is it that a startup wants to do. A startup wants to have influence. A startup wants to be able to get to customers and make some money, right? That's the major focus that they've got. Now, to make money, they need a product. They need a product in time. They need a product that can get to the market. Okay. So for us, what we thought was, if there are companies interested in having some kind of a financial back end, why not leverage us? But before doing that, what we did was we tried it ourselves. So we took a small team. There was like 3 or 4 people here in India, and we said, okay, let's see if we can create a quick, small product for, say, Panwalas here, right? Nobody in the team had ever developed an Android app. Nobody in the team had ever used this particular API layer. Within 3 days, they were able to produce it, right? That is phenomenal. And now you can go through a process of refinement. See, what ends up happening is, as Indians, we're very entrepreneurial, right? If you take a look at, just go to any city, right? Zoning laws don't really apply here because every Tom, Dick and Harry has a small shop somewhere, right? From this one you buy the samosas, this one you buy this thing or whatever it is. That's awesome. In the technology world, the barriers to entry are higher because you don't have the ability to perhaps spend that much money to be able to do certain things. So our goal was, how can we lower the barrier to enable people to do so? So, and plus in the process, by the way, if you use our foundational layer, you become a fintech company. What does that do, Gautam? You know very well do evaluation, right? So now, if you take the case of, for you to create an MVP, the normal way, everything built in-house, it'll take you 2 years. Versus with us, it takes you a couple of months, right? What does that allow you to do? It allows you to fail fast. Fail fast is the mantra most entrepreneurs follow to be able to figure out what's the right direction to head in. And if you're able to do that, you can set the direction as you go along, and within a year, you might come up to someplace really nice. In addition to that, if you want to actually penetrate other segments, you're able to do that quite quickly. So you can think, again, sounds like a mantra, but think about your core competency and your business, and don't worry about the areas you don't have to worry about.
Perfect. I think if I just had to summarize that, continue to build the core competency that you have into your product. Everything allied which has a fintech piece to it, probably integrate into existing APIs that are available in the market.
Absolutely. In addition to that, what we do is, all the people who are becoming part of what we're calling the Intuit Circles community have a presence on our website. And if you have integrated with us from a technology perspective, you get highlighted as such. For us, a key part of the website, and we're actively working on it. In fact, we run the Intuit Circles organization like a startup also. So it's very nimble, very frugal, and we're trying to truly experience what it means to be a startup. But discoverability is a key part, right? What's nice is this particular endeavor is going to be international. We're starting in India, right? I'm using the same advice I've been given over the past 20 minutes.
Of course.
We're starting in India, we'll take it global. And with that, the reach of all of these startups is going to increase dramatically. In addition to that, if you create, for example, an extension to QuickBooks that you enable in our application store, now instantly it's available to more than I think it's like 4.5 million plus customers of QuickBooks Online in the little apps tab, right? So think about the reach. Every startup wants to have that kind of reach.
Absolutely. You're talking about 50 lakh, business users. For a B2B startup, I think, that's a dream. Right?
It's tremendous, and more. That's just the beginning, and much more. And we have already examples of companies who have integrated with us and extended the reach.
Can you give me an example of what kind of companies are these that probably have integrated into, a QuickBooks marketplace? Because, for a lot of people listening, I think the first question is, am I running probably or building a product that could be eligible for this? right? If you can give us an example, that would be easy for people to understand.
So there are two types of integrations, right? So one integration which we call the App Store integration, which is creating typically an extension to QuickBooks Online of some kind, an extension being a very loosely defined term, and that enables you to be in our App Store. The other is a private integration. Private integration is an application you create which has connectivity to our SaaS backend, right? But it's not in our App Store. Both of those are more than welcome. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a company called T-Sheets in the US.
Just a second,
Sure.
I believe that it's not audible. Can you guys hear me? I'm hoping, okay, fine, it's audible.
It's
It was
audible?
for a brief 10 seconds, yes.
Some network glitch. So T-Sheets in the US was a company based out of Boise, Idaho. I'll give you an Indian example as well. So they created an extension on top of QuickBooks Online, and it was for time card management.
Okay,
Right.
time card management.
Time
Okay.
card management. Sounds like a small niche area, but very, very important, right? Because there are all kinds of
Correct.
idiosyncrasies
Every
that happen
business would
based
love
on
to.
industry or whatever. And they did a really good job. We had our own product, but then we looked at their product and we're like, man, this is pretty damn good, and it's getting some traction.
So,
Today T-Sheets is a part of
so T-Sheets
Intuit.
that built time card management was able to get access to all the customers that are using QuickBooks.
Not just that, they got access to all those customers. In the end, we ended up acquiring them
Okay.
because it was just so awesome.
Okay.
So, and then there's an example of a company here named File. File is into expense receipt management for your expense management part. And they have some really cool features like, you have a receipt, you scan it, you send over email to the entity and it processes it. It has like, OCR, etc. built into it. And they integrated with us because it needs a financial backend. And after the integration, they now have several customers around the world. So the point is, and the integrations are not difficult.
Right.
So one of the things we're trying to let people know is that, if you think that you want or need some kind of a financial backend, don't develop it. Use this. Integration is not difficult. Focus on getting the market. Focusing on reaching the
Absolutely,
customers.
Sanket. In fact, that was something that we wanted to touch today as well, right? So this entire API world, right? So this is something that I would say the last 1 year, a lot of companies have started exploring this route, right? Again, we would love to reach a much different level of high in terms of the number of startups that are making use of the open APIs. So I think that's very important. Given that you've mentioned that the API route with large product companies, for example, Intuit, is probably going to help a lot of startups building niche products or products for niche verticals. Could end up piggybacking on to reach a larger global market.
Yeah, see, I'll give an example of an API route outside of Intuit.
Sure.
Right? What is the biggest competitor today to Paytm?
From a payments point of view?
Google Pay.
Google Pay.
Google Pay. What's Google Pay built on? UPI.
API.
What's UPI? UPI is APIs and the India stack. This is the power. Even a company like Google is not trying to reinvent it. They're using UPI, time to market is reduced. They focus on the customer experience. It's incredible. And within a short period of time, they've gone from being nothing to being a true competitor.
Instead of building a wallet and reinventing the wheel again, just building on top
Exactly.
of API.
This is an amazing example of what APIs can do.
Yeah.
Google knew what it wanted to focus on. This thing is available, let's leverage it.
Very true. So at this point, I'm just going to quickly take a couple of questions from the folks here.
Yeah.
Right. So we've had different kinds of questions. Some questions on about Intuit's products itself. I'm not sure if you would love to take that now, but more on product development, go-to-market strategy. But let me actually make everyone happy here. Let me take one question on on Intuit's products, right? So one of the questions was around there are multiple products within Intuit. QuickBooks probably being the most famous and popular one, and we've probably looked at opening up the APIs. Has there been cases within the global Intuit organization where startups have been able to piggyback on some of the other products as well?
Yeah. So my understanding is that QuickBooks APIs are the only publicly available ones today. I'll just mention the other big products that we have. TurboTax is one of the premier tax filing softwares in the US with a huge market share. Then there's a product called Mint. Mint is a personal wealth management product, kind of similar to Walnut, Money Tap, etc.
Right.
from here. And then we have something called Pro Connect, which is basically the professional level tax filing system made for accountants. So they can do practice management, and we will take care of